I'm Lisa Stone. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Parenting Aces.
So glad you're back for the Parenting Aces podcast. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving, whether you were at home with friends and family or at a junior tournament. I hope you had just a wonderful, wonderful weekend. We had all of our kids home from the left coast, which was so much fun. We had a house full, and my parents were here. My brother and sister-in-law came in town, and we just had a great, great time eating too much and drinking also too much, but also just spending time together, which was really, really nice. We don't get to do that often. And so it was just a lovely, lovely time together. So this week I have Frank Giampaolo back on the podcast. And for those of you who have been around a while, I'm sure you've heard my previous podcast with Frank. And the reason I decided to have him back on this week is because he's got a new book out. And it's all about neuro priming. If, like me, you have no idea what that means, I hope you'll keep listening and learn about this technique, which is very unique. And I learned a lot listening to Frank and chatting with Frank about the why behind this new book and what he's hoping to accomplish with it. But I also wanted to let y'all know that Frank has very generously offered the Parenting Aces audience a free copy of his match chart collection, which is a great tool for parents, gives you a job as you're watching your kid compete, and there are all these different charts that you can use, and then you can share it with your child's coach or with your child, him or herself. It's really cool. So the link to that will be in the show notes. Be sure and check that out and take advantage of Frank's generosity there. And I also wanted to let you know that links to all of Frank's books can be found on our website, parentingaces.com. If you click on the books tab, then you'll see all of his books listed there with links to purchase them if you're interested. And one last thing I wanted to share with you guys, and that is that this will be our last new episode for 2017. I'm going to take a little break from recording and uploading podcasts while I get through the holiday season, and I'm doing a little bit of travel, so I wanted to just kind of relieve a little bit of the pressure, and I hope you will take a break as well. If you are having withdrawal symptoms from Parenting Aces, you can always go back and catch up on some of the episodes you may have missed over the last 5.5 years. We've got a lot of good ones out there, and in the meantime, I hope that you take advantage of the little break and spend some quality time with your friends and family as we get through December and the holiday season and get all pumped up to start 2018. So that said, enjoy this week's episode with Frank Giampaolo. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, and I'll catch y'all in January. Frank Giampaolo, thanks for being back on the podcast. So happy to have you again.
Hi, Elise. Hello, everybody. How's it going?
It's going great, and we're chatting with you actually in my same time zone this time, which never happens. You're on the East Coast, and I'm on the East Coast, and usually we have to work around these 3-hour time changes and all of that, so this was much easier. Thank you for that.
No worries. Everything's good, except for usually it's 78 degrees and sunny, and now it's 38 and raining. So,
yeah, it's a little chilly in Atlanta today too. But what are you gonna do?
Okay. Right.
So
hey,
the reason,
yeah, go for it.
Well, I was going to say, the reason for having you back on the podcast this week is you have a new book out, and it's called Neuro Priming for Peak Performance, Customizing Tennis Audio Recordings, and I have had the opportunity to read it, and congratulations. This is a great addition to the tennis library out there, but I wanted to ask you, you've written quite a few books. Why did you feel the need to write this one?
Well, sometimes books come a little bit organically, and this is one of those. The book is based on something I've been doing for about a year and a half with college teams, top-ranked juniors, and even at like the tennis congress with adult, tennis athletes. So it kind of got to the point where it's more of a workbook than an actual, novel type of book. But it's one of these situations where we're finding just great success. I'm finding some players that once they start doing this, they're really maximizing their potential at a much faster rate. They're going from winning 1 or 2 rounds to winning whole tournaments. And so I thought it was something we should bring to the table, bring out for all the parents and athletes and coaches.
Fantastic. And just for my listeners' sake, I want y'all to know there will be a link to Frank's book in the show notes for this week's podcast. So be sure and check that out and get your copy. But let's jump right in here. Neuro Priming. What is that? What does that mean?
No, it's a good question. It's really it's based on sports science and neuroscience. They talk about neuro priming as a form of, we commonly would use the term mental rehearsals or visualization. And so this is just a little bit more of a fancy way of saying mental rehearsals. And the whole idea with the book was, I find more often than not that great performances, they stem from great decision making, and great decisions are thought through. They're organized, and they're even pre-planned. So kids that are winning tournaments definitely have their physical, mental, and emotional skill sets organized, pre-planned. And this book is kind of written in 5 different chapters, 5 different scripts. And I guess the analogy I could use for folks out there listening is, if we were trying to raise a world-class Hollywood actor or actress, they would have to morph into character, memorize their script before they get to the Warner Brothers lot to shoot the movie or shoot the show. Then, of course, for 2 or 3 hours, they have to stay in character, stay on script. And the interesting part of this is that tennis athletes have to do exactly the same thing. They can get into character if they know what their script is. And the mental side, their script is things like their top 7 patterns of play, how to beat certain styles of opponents, what are the patterns they should be running. And so there's mental scripts like that. There's emotional scripts. What are the physical and even like verbal triggers for handling choking and panicking? How do you handle gamesmanship? So what I've found is when we have athletes actually customize and write out their own script on their own paper, and then they record it into their digital cell phone, they can actually listen to these audio tape recordings at night or before matches, when they're driving to and from practice. And the cool thing we're finding, and a lot of these athletes are reporting, is that it's kind of like preventative medicine. So they're hardwiring their plans, their contingency plans. So when they get into the match, guess what? They have all the solutions. So
what I find so interesting about this, Frank, that's different from any of the other kind of mental training things that I've read or heard about, is that you are suggesting that the tennis player record these cues, these reminders in their own voice. So it's their own voice in their ear right before they play or right before they go to sleep at night or right before practice, rather than, some sports psychologist or a coach. It's their own voice. And
yeah, absolutely. And it's totally customized to their game, to their issues. based on their brain type, their body type. So all of their solutions are customized. And although I do love sports psychology, I don't buy the idea of sitting with a psychologist and they're hypnotizing you. You are great. You are worthy. I never got that. It didn't work for me. But for me, having practical application, plans put into place, it's almost like, if there's juniors out there listening, it's almost like having all the answers to the math test before you go in and take the test. So to me, there's so many benefits we're finding, and I'm having top college athletes say things like, I used to make 18 unforced errors a set. Now I make 10, which is huge. Other athletes say, not only do I fix my problems faster, I don't even make the errors anymore because I'm listening to myself remind me about how to do it correctly. So,
well, I just have to wonder. Yeah, I have to wonder from a psychological perspective and from a scientific perspective. And I don't even know if this information's out there, but how much of a difference does it make that the player is listening to his or her own voice, telling himself or herself, all of these positive things? And it's kind of that old trick of, writing things on Post-it notes and putting them around your house, positive little messages to yourself. But this takes that a giant step further by making it auditory. And the thought of it being, you're listening to it through headphones or earbuds directly into your ear with no outside distraction. I'm just wondering, in terms of the effectiveness of this, will there be a way to measure that? I mean, to me, it's got to have a huge impact that it's in the player's own voice.
Yeah. I agree with you, and I find that it's based on accountability. Once the player writes out their script, which is part of the book, and then they actually record it in their own voice, now it's their script. They buy into it because it's theirs. And that's a really big key. Remember when we were teenagers, if it was our parents' idea, forget about it. But right. If it's our idea, it's valid, right?
Right. And I mean, even taking that a step further, we always say that the players are more apt to hear things when it's said by the coach rather than a parent, right? So that's why that communication between parent and coach is so important. But again, this is taking that even a step further again by saying you're not hearing it from your coach, you're not hearing it from your parent, you're hearing it from yourself. This is something you've written by yourself, for yourself, that you're saying to yourself before you go out and practice or compete.
And it really does encompass the whole entourage, because when the athletes do sit down with this short little booklet of the 5 little chapters, I encourage the parents to be there, and they sit down with a high IQ or maybe even a high EQ coach to do the scripts correctly. But then, of course, if the parents aren't involved, they're not going to remind the athlete, to listen to it at night as they're falling asleep, to listen to it in the morning, first thing when they wake up before they get out of bed. And, a lot of the neuroscience talks about listening to it when you're falling asleep, when your conscious mind is drifting away, your subconscious is coming alive. So I think that's a big key too, that we all understand that it is kind of still based on tennis parent education, coaching education, and not just the athlete. The parents are involved, but they're not the driving force. The athlete is the driving force, and oh, by the way, congratulations too. I listened to your Philadelphia conference.
Oh, thanks.
That was awesome. Boy, we need that so much in this world. It's amazing. So,
well, thank you.
I was excited to hear it. But anyway, so yeah, we're finding that you've heard this word before. The term is inner dialogue or self-coaching. So when it comes to crunch time, it's a tipping point, and the match can go in either person's favor. The athlete that wins has positive, optimistic inner dialogue, self-coaching, right? If the first three words that come into their mind is, like kick serve out wide, instead of, dear God, I'll go to church every Sunday for 3 months if I can just get this one serve in. So, I really believe in inner coaching, and we want the athlete to be an independent thinker, independent problem solver, so they're not in a match looking over at their coach, looking at their parent for the answer. Man, they have the answer because they're doing neuro priming.
Right. And I mean, let's talk details and specifics here, because I think for my audience, if they haven't had a chance to read the book yet, we're kind of talking gobbledygook right now to them, because they don't really have an understanding of what it is that you're trying to teach through this book, Neuro Priming. Neuro Priming. It's a concept of getting the brain ready to do a task, whatever that task is, whether it's practice, compete, take a test, go to prom. I mean, whatever it is, you're getting
you're right on the
head right. You're getting your head right before you go out and do the task. So
yeah, and really, it's a wonderful life skill, and interesting for me. I just got back from the tennis congress with about 100 crazy adult athletes, and I'm talking about folks that run multi-million-dollar corporations, and they're saying we need to do neuro priming for almost every job description in our corporation. And so it's really not a tennis issue, it's a life issue. And as you know, before you go and speak at these big conferences, you're probably going to visualize beforehand, and you're going to go through and rehearse your scripts, and so when you get there, you're more confident, you're more aware of the points you want to make, and so it's kind of a life skill that I think that if parents are listening, this is the kind of life skill that we want our kids to have throughout college, and then later as they become adults.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about a script, what a specific script might look like and what it might sound like. So I don't know if you want to pick one of the ones that you've laid out in the book. Okay, so I'll let you do that.
Okay, so by the way, in the book, at the back of the book, there's sample answers from a Harvard player. And so players, parents, coaches, if you pick up the book and you're going through a script, if you're not sure of an answer, you flip to the back, and there's a series of sample answers. So I'll give you a couple examples of sample solutions for audio tape number 3, mental protocols for single. So this is based off that. Okay, so my A game plan is I'm a hard-hitting baseliner. My B plan is steady counterpuncher. My shot tolerance level is 5 balls. My primary top 7 patterns are my most proficient pattern serving to the deuce side. I hit a slice serve down the tee to their backhand, and then I want my inside-out forehand into their backhand. So like Andre Agassi called that the double backhand pattern. So it's not new. It's old school, but it works like a charm. Number 2, my most proficient pattern serving to the ad side. And then for the answer, the athlete would write something like, I hit a kick serve out wide to the backhand, and then I rip my cross-court forehand. Now, these primary patterns are super important because that's an athlete's, not only their A game plan, but I call it their global plan. They're going to go into any match, whether it's first round or finals, whether it's clay court, grass court, hard court, whether they're in Miami or Moscow, they go into every match with their global systems, which is their top patterns. So the one I just mentioned, the most proficient pattern serving to the ad side, when I took a group of top juniors to Indian Wells about 2 years ago now, Rafa Nadal was playing Ryan Harrison. We're charting top 7 patterns at Indian Wells, okay? So setting the scene right here. Rafa hits a slice serve on the ad side out wide to Ryan's backhand, pulls him way up the court. Then Rafa hits his inside out, forehand cross court. He did it 84% of the time in that match.
Wow.
He knows his script. If his script is winning 2 out of 3, you just stay on script. Now, the irony is most juniors don't even know what their script is. So, but at least I can't even tell you how many times I've been at tournaments. I've had parents or coaches say to the junior, okay, Joey, just go out there and play your game, man. Just play your game. And then I'll go over to Joey and I'll go, Joey, what's your game? And he goes, haven't a clue. I don't even know what I don't know. But they don't know what their top patterns are. And it's up to us as high performance coaches, not just to feed another basket of backhands, but to help athletes organize who they are, how to expose their strengths, hide their weaknesses. So there's top 7. Do you want me to give you a couple more samples of that chapter?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Okay. This is the mental for singles, but I will profile my opponent's game by, number 1, recognizing their style of play. So in other words, I'm playing a retriever right now, or I'm playing a hard-hitting baseliner style opponent. Number 2 is spot their favorite top 7 patterns and shutting them down. So at the higher levels of junior tennis, you don't just have your own top 7 patterns memorized, but you're highly on the lookout for your opponent's favorite plays. So as you know, your son played high-level college ball, but as you know, if you give somebody a short ball in their short ball range and they come in and crush it down the line, after 3 of those, it should be pretty obvious that their favorite short ball option is crush it down the line. So what we want our athletes to do is spot it, go shut it down, and then make the opponent beat you with maybe a drop shot or an approach shot or anything that's more of a secondary play. Score management. This is another big key in winning these close matches. So here's an example of score management. There's a big difference between positive game points and negative game points. And often, coaches would say, this is a big point, pay attention. But athletes have to play positive big points very differently than negative big points. So a positive big point is when you're up 40-love, 40-15, and the athlete might write in their script, they might write, on positive game points, it requires me to play aggressive and positioning inside the court more. So this is what this one a Harvard player said for his example. Negative game points, when you're down, 15-40, hit neutralizing strokes, apply more margins. So it's really important that these mental and emotional protocols are warmed up as well. So, Lisa, you play still, so how often do we see an athlete go out and they warm up their hardware? They warm up their strokes and maybe even their athleticism, they go for a run or something, but they don't warm up their mental or emotional. And now they get into a tight match, and almost always when kids lose a tight match, I got to be honest, they never walk off the court and say, if I had my follow through 2 inches higher, I would have beat that toad. They never say that. They always say things like, I was up 5-2, I choked, I couldn't close out the lead, the guy cheated and I went nuts. So they always when they lose, they always blame mental and emotional. So it's one of the biggest reasons why I decided to write this book, is to try to get intermediate athletes to start to develop their software. So you know how we kind of look at a computer and we go, the computer needs hardware and software to run smoothly. So the hardware are the buttons and the screens, and the software are the programs. Well, same thing in tennis. Man, we need hardware and software. So this book is kind of based a little bit more on, organizing the software. And I think it'll really help the parents that, we get calls almost 10 times a week. I'm sure you do too, about, my kid's not mentally tough. He's got the best strokes out there, but he never wins, that kind of thing. So that's kind of why I put this book together.
And so when they go through these exercises, writing out these scripts, then they are, according to, the protocol of this book, they're then to actually read these scripts into their phone, record them as voice memos into their phone so that they can listen to them? And do they do a separate one for each of the 5 chapters in the book?
Yes, you're right on. It takes about 5 minutes to listen to each one. And so the beautiful thing nowadays is, and these athletes, they don't go anywhere without their cell phone. So there's no excuse. They have all their answers 24/7 in their pocket on their phone. So the 5 chapters would be stroke protocols, which is super essential, but also very basic. In stroke protocols, we talk about primary and secondary strokes and what is the athlete's 2 or 3 word catchphrase that they use to hit that stroke really efficiently. So maybe if it's a first serve, somebody might say, toss in front, toss lower, toss higher. A second serve, it might be toss back more, land in the court more. Everybody's very unique, and the answers to their problems are customized. That's why, in my opinion, I couldn't write this book with the answers already in it, because the answer that's great for, Mark is totally wrong for Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway,
that totally makes sense. And so, what are you hearing from your players that are using this protocol now?
Well, really, I'm getting a slew of benefits. I'll give you a few if you want to. They're playing with increased confidence, way more match awareness, quicker cognitive processing speed. So they're not hesitating, getting stuck. They're not unsure. They know what to do. And when things go wrong, they know how to fix it. That's huge. There's an improved mind-body neuroconnection. So, every little thing we do is a mental act. Anybody listening, if you just take your index finger and wiggle it up and down, now that's a motor program sent from your brain through your nervous system down into the muscle groups of your body. And so it's a neural pathway. And the more these athletes listen to the appropriate answers, the more they strengthen the neural pathways. And the interesting thing with sports science is you can strengthen your neural pathways by visualizing. So, for example, folks out there listening, let's say you have a junior player that can't beat moonball pushers. They hate playing pushers. So we would have a neural pathway of visualize the opponent running to the corner, throwing up a moonball. Now, our athlete goes in 4 or 5 steps, takes a calm swing volley out of the air. Now, the cool part is if the athlete is visualizing that, 3 or 4 nights a week and before the match, guess what they're going to do way better in a match? They're going to go out there and knock off that swing volley, win the breaker. So, anyway, there's so many nice, solutions. Some players report conflict resolution, stress management, opponent awareness, resolutions for choking and panicking. So really it's based on problem-solving skills, decreased worry, stress, and fear. All of these things are based on the mental and emotional side, but I find if we can get, players to play in that quiet, calm, relaxed state of mind in a match like they can do on the practice court, now they're going to have a lot more fun, and they're going to win a lot more. So it's a win-win.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I thought was interesting was that you do address facing a cheater and preparing for that. And, I get this topic all the time from the Parenting Aces audience, that cheating is just getting worse and worse. And I'm not convinced that it's getting worse and worse. I think it's just been bad for a really long time. But it remains a huge challenge. How do we help our kids deal with that during a match situation? And I think that using this skill set that you're helping these players develop is a step in the right direction, right? Because you're guiding them in this book to develop a script around what to do when you face a cheater on the other side of the net.
Yes, and you're right. It's not just tough for the athlete; it's tough for the parent, isn't it? To sit there and watch your child.
Oh, it's horrible.
If they're getting cheated, oh my God, it's a tough.
Yeah.
That's a tough gig right there, and you're not even getting paid. Oh my God.
No, it's horrible. It's horrible. But I love the fact that you're giving these kids, these athletes, I shouldn't say kids because some of them are young adults, you're trying to help them develop, before they even step on the match court, a plan of how to manage that. Not fix it, solve it, but manage it, right?
Yes, and it is really a form of just preventative medicine. And with this whole idea about handling cheaters, it's important that I think we kind of talk about in neuroscience, they call this channel capacity. The human brain can't solve two complicated tasks simultaneously. That's why we're not supposed to text and drive. And athletes get into the match. Now they're starting to get, the creative line callers. They're starting to cheat on calls. And what happens almost always is our athlete's brain, it gets pulled out of, our performance goals, like top 7 patterns. And now our brain gets almost hijacked to a different channel, which is the cheater and the drama. And now they're thinking about, I'm going to kill this jerk after the match. And now they're not even found at all in their performance state of mind. And that's exactly what people that cheat, they want. They want you to leave your performance goal state of mind. And I think if we educate athletes as to why cheaters cheat, how to control what's controllable, those are big issues. Here's a funny story, though. About 15 years ago, I was having a conversation with Jack Kramer, who was a longtime friend of Vic Braden. So we're at the tennis college, and Jack Kramer, if anybody doesn't remember Jack Kramer, that was the old wooden racket of the day almost all of us used to use. He won Wimbledon in the 40s. He said in the 1930s, there was an average of 6 bad line calls a match in the 1930s.
Wow.
So I think you're right. It's pretty much the same. One of the questions I like to ask, though, for parents and athletes is, how many unforced errors are you making? If you're making 48 unforced errors a match, it's probably not the 4 or 5 cheating line calls that's killing you. Maybe you need to control what you can control, right, which is the 48 unforced. The other interesting thing we did with Leiden studies was that most athletes cheat themselves. And what I mean by that is the score is their ad. the opponent serves out by 4 inches, our junior plays it and then loses the point. And so, in essence, they're the ones that are cheating themselves out of the point they rightly earned, but they're not calling an out ball out.
Mm-hmm.
So that happens 3 or 4 times a match. And so that's pretty interesting for me. We did a fun study back in the 1990s at the tennis college, and we had these helmets, and a camera was on this little stem, and the camera was shooting into the eyes of the athlete. And so when athletes are running and jumping and landing and airborne, they're legally blind. And the term is motion blur. And a lot of athletes miss line calls because they're landing and they're moving, and when their feet impacts the cement, their eyes actually jiggle and move in their eye sockets. And it's kind of why we can't read the newspaper while we're running around a track, because their eyes are moving. So a lot of bad calls are based on motion blur. So that was interesting for me.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, it makes total sense.
Yeah, old school tidbit there, motion blur.
Yeah. But getting back to the neuro priming, so regardless of what your opponent is doing in terms of creative line calling or creative scorekeeping, if you have prepared a script, rehearsed the script, listened to the script over and over and over again, the idea is that when you get into the situation in real life, you're prepared to handle it because you've already thought about all the things that are going to happen, how you're going to respond to them, what you're going to do to stick to your own game plan, right?
That's exactly right. And it's not just my job as a coach to teach a topspin backhand. We have to teach athletes how to prime positive behaviors. So neuropriming really, this might sound kind of goofy, but it's simply a form of like optimistic brainwashing. Instead of what we almost always see is pessimistic brainwashing. You know, when you watch the news today, any day, every day, every newscaster starts with the problem is. Yeah, but what's the solution, man? I'm tired of hearing the problem. Tell me the solution. I wish they would say the solution is. And that's what I want kids to have walking into a match. They have all the solutions. So no matter what life throws at them that day, whether it's rainy, windy, bad line calls, man, they have the solution. Because they're already motor programming it in, and they're dialing it in. So it's turning out right now to be just a ton of fun with all the athletes I'm working with. And that's why I was so excited when I heard we can chat a little bit more about it, because I know that you have parents that are going through the journey right now, and this is going to make it a lot easier for them.
I mean, anything we can do to make it easier, because God knows it is a tough journey, and it's so frustrating at times. But there's also, every now and then you get that positive reinforcement of why you're on this path, right? And your child says or does something, or somebody tells you something positive about your child, and you're like, yes, this is why we're doing this. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. But sometimes we get caught up in the moment, and you question, why did we jump on this path? What were we thinking here?
Yes.
But and I think that like you said, this neuro priming, this is a life skill. And listen, I write about that all the time, that tennis is a metaphor for life. And I didn't coin that. I mean, there are lots and lots and lots of people out there that that talk about that there's so many life lessons to be learned when learning the game of tennis and competing in the game of tennis. And this neuro priming, as you said, this is a skill that you need before you walk into a job interview. You need it, before a big presentation or a big meeting, or God forbid you have to fire somebody. Having,
right on.
I mean, but seriously, right? I mean, this is a skill that you're going to use, even, in dealing with things in your home. I mean, if you're working, with a contractor to do something in your home, being able to mentally prepare for what could be, a confrontational meeting is beneficial because it helps you stay calm and stay on task. And this is all good stuff. So, Frank, where can people find Neuro Priming for peak performance?
Well, probably the easiest is Amazon or any of the bigger bookstores. Of course, our website has it, which is maximizingtennispotential.com. And but the fun thing nowadays, even with Amazon, is they can send out hard copy books within a day. So they do it. Amazon does print by demand now. So if you order a book, obviously if it's an ebook, you get it instantly. If it's a hard book, they have it printed. They send it directly to you anywhere around the world, and it's quick and easy and painless. So anyway, yeah, there's I'm curious because you're talking about life skills. And that's the last chapter of this book, the 20 most essential, life skills. And so the athletes have to assess all their life skills like time management, adaptability, handling adversity, stress, perseverance, courage, work ethic, resiliency. And so we dive into that in the last chapter because God knows if you don't have resiliency, goal setting, sticking to commitments, courage, you're not going to win anyway. Even if you have the best-looking backhand at the club, you're just going to be a good-looking loser if you don't have tremendous life skills. So I'm glad you mentioned that. That's a big chapter for me, life skills development.
Well, and I think it's really the difference between winning and losing, right? Because there are a lot of players out there that possess the beautiful strokes. They have the patterns of play. I mean, they understand tactics and strategy, but it's these intangibles that are the difference. And, everybody at the top of the game plays well. Everybody at the top of the game is a hard worker. They're fit. They understand what it takes to be at the top of the game. But the difference between winning and losing is just this teeny tiny differential that the players that work hard at developing these intangibles are the ones that come out on top. And I mean, we see it over and over and over again, even at the pros. By the time this airs, the World Tour Championships will be over. But yesterday I was watching the Nadal-Goffin match. And, I mean, Nadal looked out of that match from, like, the third game of the first set. And all of a sudden, he's won the second set and he's in the third. It was just a crazy match. And I just kept thinking, the difference there in Goffin getting off the court in 2 sets and having to go that extra set and really having to battle that extra set was Nadal's mental strength and his belief in himself and that intangible that, we see over and over again with players like him. And, if we can help our...
Yeah, I think that's our job, is to help super athletes understand that everybody gets in matches and their strokes get hijacked. Your emotions override everything. So the difference is players like, Rafa, their strokes get hijacked too, but now they have the solutions to fix it and salvage the match. For the rest of us mere mortals, our strokes get hijacked by our crazy emotion, and we're not trained how to fix it. So we lose, and he wins.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
That's
I think
true.
you're right on the money. We have to try to help athletes and help parents with this idea that, we've all been in, situations before and where your emotions get the best of you, and it is tough out there in matches, I tell you. But if these kids have solutions for when their strokes get hijacked, now they know how to kind of get it back, stop self-destructing kind of a thing. That's golden. So that's what this book is all about, really.
Well, I love it. So, Frank, if people want to reach you, what's the best place or best way to get in touch with you?
Well, I can just throw out my direct email, and no matter where I am, I'll get back to you. I leave in a couple of days for Spain for about 3 weeks to go coach, but my email, fgsa@earthlink.net. So F as in Frank, G as in George, S as in Sam, A as in Apple, at earthlink.net.
Got it. And that'll be in the show notes for my listeners. So if you guys have any questions directly for Frank, you can email him. And I will attest to the fact that the man does respond quickly. So shoot him an email and he'll get back to you. Frank, thanks so much for being with us and sharing your newest publication with us. And again, to my listeners, the links for the book and Frank's website and his email will all be in the show notes. So be sure and check those out. And happy travels to you, Frank, as you head to one of the most beautiful places on the planet.
It should be nice. It's Barcelona this time, so it should be nice. And hey, congratulations to you. And I hope you and I get to do some conferences together. That'll be a kick.
That would be awesome. I know. I still can't believe we haven't met in person yet, but we will. It's coming.
Yes. All righty. Take care of yourself. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
I'm Lisa Stone, and you've been listening to the Parenting Aces podcast. For tennis parents, by a tennis parent. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe to us and write a review on iTunes. For more information on navigating the junior and college tennis journey, visit us online at parentingaces.com. As always, a huge thank you to our sponsor, tennisballs.com.